If you're a high-performing person, somewhat of an A-type personality, like myself, you fully understand that the more information you have about the specific topics that circle and surround your life, the better you are able to perform on a day-to-day basis, week on week, month on month, and year on year, in order to satiate the type of person that you are. There's one thing to firstly put out there, and it's something that took me a while to realize. The very qualities that helped you as an A-type or high-performing person to become successful in the first place: dissatisfaction with mediocrity, relentless drive towards your goal, self-criticism, high standards, eventually become the very things that prevent you from going to the next level. And this is what this video is about. How do we, as let's call them A-team players, continuously have the ability to move to the next level? And I'm sure as you've gone through your journey, you've understood one very important thing, and that is who your biggest enemy is. And who that biggest enemy is the enemy within. Here's why high performers become their own obstacle. One of the biggest misconceptions is that in order for high achievers to be motivated, it is derived from the ingredient of confidence. Many aren't. They're motivated by almost the complete opposite. They're motivated by the voice within that comes from the enemy within. They're motivated by their inability to tolerate untapped potential. The entrepreneur sees opportunities that they aren't pursuing. The athlete sees weaknesses that they haven't yet fixed. The executive sees skills that they haven't yet mastered. Our attention naturally gravitates towards what is missing. Now, this is extremely useful when it comes to trying to achieve anything or trying to level up. However, for your well-being, which in turn is the biggest ingredient to achieving the next levels or getting to the next levels, for your well-being, you have to understand this. It doesn't necessarily bode well for how you feel about yourself. Research on perfectionism consistently shows that self-critical perfectionism leads to higher levels of stress, burnout, depression, anxiety, the entire gamut of ill feelings, the feelings that we don't want, and especially reduced performance over time. Listen, as an A-type, and I'll speak for myself here, as an A-type, I'm trying to perform in the relationship that I'm in the business that I'm in, whether it's my own business or somebody else's business, whether I'm just a pawn in the entire game, but I want to be the best pawn that there is, whether it be with the relationships that I have with my family, whether it be with my friends, whether it be me trying to learn a new skill, me trying to do my hobbies in a way that is fun, but my level of fun is a sense of competitiveness, but with who? It's not with anyone else. They are just proxies. It's usually the enemy within. Now you have to understand that the enemy within is not laziness. It's that little voice inside, and I'm sure many of you will understand this. It's that little voice inside that says, I haven't gone as far as I can go. I haven't done enough. There's more to be had. You should be further ahead. That little tiny voice is the problem. And the reason why it is the problem, and the reason why it is your biggest enemy, is because it understands every single insecurity that you have, every pitfall, every doubtful conversational word, every traumatic response, every fear-based movement and action, and therefore decision that is made on a day-to-day basis, and it is able to swing that around and use it against you in order to do what? In order to create enough ill feeling within you so that you're not able to then ascend even further. Here's one of the greatest misunderstandings that many high performers believe, and something that I used to believe as well. If I'm harder on myself, I will be able to achieve more. However, the research that has come out begs to differ. Research by psychologist Kristen Neff has shown that self-compassion is often associated with greater resilience, persistence, and willingness to try again after failure. Why? Because when you punish yourself for every setback, your brain begins associating effort with emotional pain. Eventually, it starts avoiding effort altogether. The person thinks that they're lacking discipline, but in actual fact, they're just exhausted from continuously fighting their own selves. Listen, I do it all the time. I fight myself day in and day out. And all of this knowledge acquisition is my attempt, the same way you guys are watching this video right now. It's my attempt to understand the psychology behind all of these things. It is extremely difficult to win a battle when you have no idea about the battleground that you're going on, the people that are in your army, the general that is leading the charge, the types of weapons that are being brought to this war. If you do not have at least a fundamental or basic understanding of the playing field that you're on, it is extremely difficult to come out on top. It is extremely difficult to even sleep peacefully at night with a misunderstanding or no understanding about having the information that you needed in order to even try your best. That's how I sleep peacefully at night. If I feel like I've tried my best and I put as much as I possibly could in, yes, it hurts, but at least I feel like the version of myself that I brought to the fore at the time of the battle was the best that I could have brought at that time. And I left everything on the playing field. Here's something that I really want to put on the table for everyone to think about. Through my journey of trying to better myself day in and day out, I've struggled with a lot of things. And one of the things that I still to this day struggle with is eating a little bit too late in the evening. And what that does is it has this ripple effect. Now, there are more things that I've not necessarily conquered. Now, they're not the biggest torments in terms of holding me back from achieving the things that I already achieved. But I do know, if I listen to myself very intently, that me conquering these other things that I feel like I'm missing is a way for me to be able to sleep a little bit better at night. Now, in psychology, this happens for me, right? I've discovered that the thought patterns that happen when I have more than 2 or 3 different things that I need to be able to overcome or have been struggling with for a very long time, my brain goes into a psychological term, which I've now discovered is a psychological term, which is all or nothing cognitive distortion. Now, the all or nothing cognitive distortion is a concept that is built around lowering the bar. And when people hear lowering the bar, they immediately feel like, especially as an A-type personality, you feel like you're settling. Let me first explain what lowering the bar in this sense means. It means that I'm not trying or thinking about conquering all 3 of these things at once anymore. That's the way I used to think about it. But it means lowering the bar to a point where the activation energy required in order to be able to conquer one of these things increases the likelihood of you being able to at least conquer one thing. Because this is what happens with me. I would try to cold turkey, let's call them 3 different things. I'm eating late, I'm not waking up on time, whatever it is. What happens is I try to do all of them at once because I'm trying to reduce the amount of time that it takes for me to fix myself in a sense. But it doesn't work that way. Or at least I found a much easier way that allows for me to overcome one obstacle after another. And I know that this sounds very mundane and almost simple in a sense, but because our minds are the biggest enemy, what it's doing is it's saying, I have more to give, I'm not doing enough, I should be further ahead, which, like we said previously, is very useful. But for your state of well-being, it's increasing your cortisol levels, it's increasing your stress, it is increasing your lack of energy through anxiety and depression because you're constantly fighting yourself. And what you want to be doing is ensuring that your well-being is taken care of, not from a spiritual aspect, but from a place of understanding that you as a human living being needs energy from the mitochondria or whatever. You need energy in order to do activity. And if you are a high-performing person, the activities that you're doing most likely need a lot of energy. So what you want to do is you want to lower the bar, and this is what I've done. So instead of me thinking that I have these 3 things to overcome, I think I will allow those 3 things to be the 3 bad habits that I have. And what that internally does, at least for me, and you would have discovered the more you venture on this path of becoming more and evolving and expanding your horizons and achieving and succeeding, that it becomes more and more important to know thyself. And in knowing a little bit more about myself, I've discovered that I really move on encouragement. And if I trick my mind in a way that says, okay, I'm really focusing a lot on what I'm missing, in the sense that I have untapped potential, the untapped potential now becomes those 3 bad habits. So instead of me viewing them as something that's holding me back, I now view it as untapped potential. And that kind of gets me excited. Because if I conquer everything within myself, there is a portion of me that feels like life would be a little bit boring. But it makes me excited enough to think that I'm already at a high level, which most of you already are. Your mind is just warped in a way that prevents you from seeing it. It's like the sun might be shining, but for a blind person, they will never know. So where you place your focus and where you place your attention is the battle that needs to be had. And here, we have to trick our minds in a sense, because we've gotten to a place of so much truth that the pitfalls of ourselves become so glaringly obvious that it's so difficult to avoid. And if our mind is constantly focused and fixated on the idea of what still needs to be done, or I am missing this thing, or there's more to do, and I'm not enough yet, what we are doing is we are internalizing an inability to have sufficient energy enough to create the life that we want, or to ascend to the next level. So we have to take into account the well-being aspect of all of this. And so that is my little 2 cents when it comes to high performance individuals. Like myself, sometimes I sit and I think to myself, is this even worth it? But then I look around and I look at the things that have happened for me and my life, and thereby the lives of the people around me that I hold so dear. And I think there's nothing that would most likely ever stop me. And if you find yourself in that same boat where you realize that this is just who you are, then it is incumbent on all of us to understand that well-being is such a critical strategic play, and not settling or not some spiritual woo-woo. It is our abilities to regulate the important functions within ourselves that allow for not just more output, but more pertinent and needle moving output. Higher intensity at a higher degree.